Hello, everyone. My name is Eric, and I'm a senior. Today, we have an amazing speaker with us. In 2016, she has been selected as one of the most influential women by San Francisco Business Times. She has been a leader in Silicon Valley over 20 years by leading and building teams at Netscape, Sun Microsystems, Napster, Nextech, Udemy, and now Apollo. When she was at Netscape, first ever internet browser ever made, she managed to build a product team that captured 78% of entire market share. Even after she left Netscape, she continuously integrated new technologies, disrupted original market systems, and served the community by creating products the customer needed and wanted. She was a senior vice president of engineering at Udemy, which offered 40,000 courses in 80 different languages for 11 million students all around the world. Now, she has joined Apollo, which helped developers build great applications. She is still driven to serve others and build teams that are inclusive and impactful to this world. So, without further ado, it's my honor to introduce our proud Cal graduate and our speaker, Claire Hough.
Thank you. Claire, it is so fun to have you. And as I'm looking through your accomplishments, one of the objectives for this course is to try to introduce a lot of diverse speakers from diverse backgrounds, all sorts of different things. And I realized that really we only need to have you here because I don't think we've ever had somebody who's gone through so many different types of positions, so many different companies. So it'll be fun to talk about it. But before we get into that background, I wanted to do a little bit of just reminder for all of us who's in the audience. If you're at startup semester, can you raise your hand? Is there anybody who's still here? Oh, yeah, right there in the middle. Anybody who is in engineering right now, who's an engineering student? Fantastic. Anybody in industrial engineering? Great. How about those econ majors? Oh, there you go. Anybody studying business? Fantastic. How about architecture? There you go. How about data sciences? Fantastic. What about English? Really?
Come on.
Not even one person? History? Okay. Actually, that's pretty interesting to know. I just have to remind myself as we get toward the end of the semester. So, Claire, you've done a ton of different things, but I'm wondering for everybody's benefit, some people who aren't in engineering, if you can just talk about Apollo just for a minute, and then we'll take a step back and what Apollo does.
Good evening. How are you? This is like right at dinner time, isn't it? You guys all had dinner. Now you're going to fall asleep. So thank you for the introduction, Eric. So what does Apollo do? There are a lot of Apollos out there. There's Apollo IO, there's Apollo this and that. So we're Apollo GraphQL. Anybody know what GraphQL is? Come on. Proudly raise your hand. It's not that new. Okay, GraphQL is a graph query language that was developed actually at Facebook and open sourced in 2015. But then they sort of pull back their development of it. And my company, Apollo, that used to be Meteor. Anyone heard of Meteor? It was a JavaScript framework that was amazing before React. Do you guys know what React is? Okay, good. Okay, so these are all little, those of you who are not computer science majors, these are what's called frameworks that helps developers to do programming very easily. So if you're building a house from scratch, and there's no building materials that are prefabricated, then what do you have to do? You have to build your own window, you have to build your own, you have to cut wood and build your own doors, and just think about how painful it may be. So when I say frameworks, these are building the windows and the doors and all those things just come with, so you could put it together to create a beautiful house. Same thing with a lot of programming. Don't be intimidated by programming, because there are a lot of these materials out there. There are a lot of frameworks out there that helps you build a program that builds a website, builds a desktop applications or mobile applications and all that. So you gotta know how to search for those and use the right materials to kind of build that program. And GraphQL is one of those tools. So GraphQL sits between, how many of you know how to program in JavaScript? Come on, that's got to be pretty common, right? So JavaScript is a front-end development language. So most websites use JavaScript to render and have a logic behind all the components that they present, like buttons and where you could put like drop-down fields and all different kinds of fields and all that. So JavaScript is used, and there are a lot of JavaScript frameworks that helps you build those websites. But JavaScript developers also have to work with the business logic, or what we call back-end services, or the back-end or the business logic services. So for example, when you try to pay on Amazon, there's probably multiple services that comes into play, because somebody has to maintain the shopping cart, has to pass that amount of dollar that this person has to pay into payment systems and called the payment services. So these are all the services, right? And there's what we call application programming interface, REST API, that all these people who build services give it to front-end developers or developers who are building the website to be able to use. And it gets a little complicated when the front-end developers want something a little different than what the back-end service people have developed. They have to go negotiate extending that service or doing something else. And GraphQL actually simplifies all that. So it's a data access layer between front-end developers and the service developers. So it's a very simple query language. Essentially, it helps you navigate all the data that you need through what we call data graph. So it's a little cutting edge right now, but the adoption is going way up. About 26% of the JavaScript developers know what GraphQL is, and they plan to use it in the next year. Last year, November, we did a summit where we presented what's new in GraphQL. And we had 800 front-end developers who attended in San Francisco. And it's actually open source. There's the client and the server and the gateway and the back-end engine. A lot of it is open source, so people can contribute as well. Does this all sound a little too complicated? But it's actually essentially a development tool for web application developers to get access to data much easier and build a very efficient, fast application.
So you said it was developed in 2015.
It was developed in 2015.
And so, but it's not within a larger organization. Now Apollo stands on its own.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of people who are contributing to the GraphQL community. We're one of them. But we're probably the de facto standard in terms of client libraries. About 700,000 people download our client library every week and use it. They may have their own version of the server, but we have our own version of Node server as well. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those platforms that's proliferating among developers.
And it just, how old is Apollo? When was it founded?
So actually, Apollo was founded in 2010 as a Meteor development group. Anybody heard of Meteor JavaScript framework? It was actually amazing at the time, before React. When you're a small company, even though you have an amazing product, you cannot always compete with the giants like Facebook, which developed and published React, and Google had Angular. Anyway, Meteor still exists. There are some people who still use it. So it started out as a Meteor development group, but it actually repivoted the company a couple of years ago when they found that there's a bigger opportunity to provide this data graph platform.
So Basically, it is a company that maybe about 20 people in the audience are familiar with, although more can do Java. So let me take you back for a moment, if you don't mind. Only 30 years ago, when you were sitting, you weren't even sitting in these seats, Claire, I'm sorry, because this building wasn't even
didn't
here.
exist.
But basically, when you were at Cal and you were studying industrial engineering, will you talk to us a little bit about how you got to Cal and your journey and your experience here? Because I think everybody in the room can relate to that.
Let's see. Going anywhere else was not an option from my family's point of view. I went to Lowell High School. Anyone went to Lowell? San Francisco?
Lowell?
Yeah. So I came here when I was 14. I spoke very little English. I went to my high school reunion a couple years ago, and like some of these people came up to me and said, "Oh, you're the math genius who spoke broken English." Come on, we're not 18, we're not 16 anymore. But anyway, I spoke broken English. Probably my English wasn't that fluent even by the time I came to Berkeley. I spoke fluently, almost fluently, but still like comprehending, reading huge textbooks and comprehending all that was pretty difficult. And I survived my high school purely on math skills and my science skills, right? Because that's what I did well. And English was very difficult for me. And Lowell was a very academic high school, so people were good at everything. So I had to be good at some things. So I focused on math. I tutored math. And by the time I came to Berkeley, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to get out of college. I wanted to help my family, who was still immigrant family, still struggling.
And where were they from?
Settle down. We're from Seoul, Korea. So like my parents who were educated, immigrants, it was difficult for them to actually find the job where they thought it was appropriate for them, even though they didn't speak in English. So anyway, my mother did get a civil service job, and my dad kind of went back and forth between Korea. But the family was still somewhat unstable in terms of financially unstable. So my goal was to get out of college, make some money, help family. So I think it was a pretty simple goal. I didn't have this, oh, I want to enjoy my college life. I want to learn everything I can. I want to take all these courses. I was pretty naive. I didn't really know what college was like. My goal was about graduating and earning some money. So, Berkeley was actually a lot easier to get in. You guys are probably a hell of a lot smarter than I am, and you guys worked very hard to get here, so congratulations.
So I am curious, at that time, if your goal is to earn money, you'd think, I'm just assuming you'd want to go into commerce or go to business school, but you chose to go to engineering. And was that because of the language issues and being so good at math?
Definitely. Yeah, I thought I could be more competitive in engineering than business, or be a lawyer was not even in my, I couldn't even dream of becoming a lawyer or a writer, which is what I thought I wanted to do when I was young.
Yeah.
I wrote well in Korean, which does me no good. So I think what I found was that I'm pretty good in math and science, and I could do engineering. And engineering salaries were still pretty good in those days.
Yeah.
So not like these days, it's like amazing what people get paid coming out of school, but I thought like that would be a sort of easier path for me to get there.
So last week we heard from a speaker who said he really chose his courses based on the notoriety of the professors. I'm curious, how did you choose your courses?
If you're an engineering major, if you want to graduate in 4 years, you're not given a lot of choices. Maybe things have changed. I hope it did. But you have to take like 4 courses every quarter to graduate in 4 years. And I think there's maybe handful of courses you could elect to take. So there were mostly requirements. First 2 years is pretty crappy. Those of you who are engineering majors, you have to take all that chemistry, math, and physics, and all that. So, you kind of get through whatever is required, but then by the time you're a junior and senior, you get to enjoy your classes a lot more. Classes are a little smaller than the first 2 years. So if you are a sophomore or a freshman, just something more to look forward to. Last 2 years for me was a lot better than the first 2 years.
So just keep going.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed the last 2 years. And then I decided to stay another year to do masters.
So what did you do in the summers? Were people interning?
Yeah, well, internship wasn't as common, but I did intern. Well, I worked my way through school on financial aid, which was more available back then. Like, I have to tell you, my life at Berkeley was a lot easier than you guys' probably. I was fully able to afford the whole school between scholarship and work study. So the first 2 summers, I worked at University Art Museum, and then, I don't know whether it still exists, but Lowy Museum of Anthropology. And amazing art shows came through Berkeley, and I got to just enjoy it very much. Like Richard Avedon, who's a photographer, Inuit exhibit at the Lowy Museum. It's for engineering major who don't get a lot of culture. I got some culture, which I enjoy a lot as well. So I worked at the museum first 2 summers. But then the last 2 summers in school, I had internship at a transportation consulting company. And I did traffic simulations for Orange County traffic study, like figuring out how to put commuter trains there. So if you guys know industrial engineering, it has like a transportation part of the discipline. You do queuing theory and simulation of traffic and do capacity analysis and all that. So I did that for commuter train line one summer, and the coal train going from Wyoming to LA and Long Beach Port, well, how many coal trains you could put through, study the following summer.
That sounds somewhat fascinating, maybe. Well, I know, what was it that convinced you that you actually wanted to go and get your graduate degree on top of all that 4 years in school?
Again, I hate to be so financially motivated, but I found out that by doing masters, which only took 1 more year, you make another $5,000 in your annual salary.
Which was a lot back then.
Which was a lot back then.
Which is more, it's like 30% more.
Yeah. It was actually more, like 25% more. So I thought it was worth it.
Yeah.
And besides, when you're a grad student, there's more like research assistantship and teaching assistantship that's available. So I didn't have to pay for it. And I actually enjoyed the courses at that point, so I thought staying another year wasn't bad, because some of my peers were actually doing a 5-year program even back then. I think my graduating class, half of my graduating class took longer than 4 years to graduate. So even back then, that was very common. So I thought, do an extra year.
So I'm trying to think about the time when you were graduating. Probably the preferred place to go might have been financial services companies. Who were the big technology companies at the time?
So the big jobs back then was you could go to Bell Labs,
Yeah.
or you could go to IBM.
Yeah.
You could go to PG&E if you have an IOR degree, because
Yeah.
PG&E was doing a lot of
Procter
modeling.
and Gamble.
Procter and Gamble,
Look
Clorox.
at soap and detergent.
Clorox, yeah. So those were the companies where a lot of people, and then we had a Chevron refinery in Richmond. So those were the big company jobs that you could get.
So which one of those big companies did you go to, or not?
I did not. I actually joined a small startup coming out of school. So I don't know if you look at my LinkedIn profile, you go, huh? So I've actually worked at 9 startups in my career. So my first job was also a startup. So it was started by one of our IOR professors who no longer was a professor. He left academia to start this company in Silicon Valley. And it was a company that was doing manufacturing system software for semiconductor companies. It's not even on the list.
No, it's not even on
Yeah,
there.
because it got bought by Applied Materials. And so it was like, back then, it was, a lot of the data science majors, in order for us to do data science, you got to first have clean data, right? So my initial job was to kind of get the data. And then I did, even back then, R programming was available. So I did some R programming to do simple analysis to say, you guys, like in this, there's a workflow of semiconductor manufacturing. So you could say this workstation or this part of manufacturing requires maintenance. You need to change the acid bath, or you need to do the machine maintenance, et cetera, kind of thing. So it was, again, it was like a manufacturing systems, software systems company. And that's where I kind of had to learn more programming, because I had only taken a couple computer science classes as an IEOR major. So I came back to school. Back then, there was no Udemy or YouTube to learn anything you want to learn.
Yeah.
So I came back to Berkeley Extensions and took some additional classes.
So I actually put this chart up. I can't even fit all of the companies where you've worked, but I tried to put the things on top where I thought you'd work the longest. So you can see companies like Netscape and Nextag and Udemy way up at the top, and then Napster and Citrus Lane and Blue Martini in there. But there's one company that you work with which was kind of really pivotal at the time, and Eric mentioned it, and that's Sun Microsystems, which I didn't even put up there.
Yeah, actually, I didn't really, I worked at Netscape.
Yeah.
And Netscape got bought by AOL, and Sun did a joint venture.
Oh, interesting.
So that's when I went and worked with Sun. Sun was a hardware company at the time,
Yeah.
and they really badly needed a software strategy, and Netscape was the big innovator at the time. So they wanted to work with Netscape, so we did a joint venture.
So Netscape, has anybody heard of well, yes, thank you.
Yeah, this is how old I am.
Netscape was it. A gentleman named Mark Andreessen, who now has a company called Andreessen Horowitz, was basically one of the founders. It was the first, I think it was the first and largest browser, and it was bought by AOL, and believe it or not, AOL was just huge in those days. So can you talk a little bit about, one of the things that I've noticed is that you seem to go, I know you said you wanted to earn money, that was your goal, but like going into a startup right upon graduation from getting your master's, and then going into this company, Netscape, where people didn't even know exactly, I guess I should put it this way. There was one computer that everybody on the floor of where I worked would go to log in. No one emailed each other. This idea of Netscape was really new. It wasn't something that people used every day.
So the essentially internet browser was the way to bring internet to the masses. And then you had to develop all these internet applications so people can actually leverage that whole power of the internet. So Netscape kind of started it all by, so the Netscape browsers actually came from universities, University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana, and then CERN Library from Europe. They were the one university, and some other universities were doing research project as well. But so we're going back in history of the internet, and before that it was the ARPANET, and there were like a lot of networking out there, and people were using it, and there was like the DOS-based browsers without the user interface and all that. But like Netscape essentially brought, by publishing the browser and making it accessible to people, proliferated the internet technology. They kind of started that revolution.
Well, what was it like there? Can you tell any good stories?
Yeah, so, oh my God, like it was, our browser team was working day and night, like literally day and night, to do the next version of the browser. And you can't really work people like 20 hours a day. So sometimes we will have people who are having little breakdowns here and there. And then the culture of kind of what they call programmers probably started in those era where a lot of the stressed out engineers actually start yelling at each other. So it was pretty chaotic on the browser side. I started a lot of the new products on the server side. There's the browser that's a client, but there's the web server that's actually serving up the content. So I was in charge of a lot of the server products. But it was like working really long hours, getting new products out the door. I was managing 4 server products at the time. But everybody was watching Netscape and trying to really understand, or was curious, or all those things combined. Everybody was so curious about what we were doing. So as soon as we put something up on the FTP server, which is like a download server, it'll just go viral within the next few hours. So people were just watching to see, we're talking server products. People got to be really technical, has to know how to install it and make it work and all that. Even server products, within 4 hours, we will get 30,000 copies being downloaded. So I think one day, me and my engineers pushed some new server code to the FTP server at 1 a.m. and then I went home, and from home I was testing the download, and when I downloaded it, there was a bug in the installation. So, I called our webmaster, said, take it down, and he said, Claire, 30,000 already got downloaded. So within hours, you had so many people looking at what you had just built and pushed.
So you were young. I mean, I don't even know, were you mid-20s when you were doing this with a lot of responsibility?
I was younger.
Oh, okay. What was it about Netscape that was interesting? Do you remember how you even got there?
Well, I worked for, do you guys know Ingress, a relational database project that was started at Berkeley?
Yeah,
They
by
were
John
the
Hankey.
Innovator of, Mike Stonebreaker, Eugene Wong, and those professors actually started this company called Ingress, which was a relational database. You guys may know Oracle better, or SQL Server. So Berkeley actually was one of the innovators in relational technology. So I worked there, and I was recruited out of, and then there was another company, there was a new kid on the block who did a faster server for transaction processing. When you say transaction, it's back then, the classic transaction was a banking transaction. When you go to the bank and actually take money out, what's called a transaction is happening behind that ATM, right? They know your card number, they authenticate you, they know your name, they know how much money you have in your account, and that full transaction has to happen in the database. And that speed of that was what determined how good your database server was in those days. So I worked on those things, and that's how I got recruited out of database companies to go to Netscape.
And so you're at Netscape for quite a while. Why? And you think that it was a great company and you'd want to stay there, and then they were bought by AOL, and maybe you could make even more money. What was it that...
Actually, by then, money was, I don't want to make me look like a money-grubbing engineer. I just wanted to make enough money to support my family. For me, I think my motivation, once you were making enough money to live on and help your family, your motivation is in a different place. I wanted to work on something cutting edge that is considered cool. So I always chose my companies based on how cool is it going to be for me to do that. And Netscape was considered a very, very cool company at the time. And it was really a lot of work. And you were running on adrenaline. Even back then, they fed you, dinner if you stayed late, and you're working at all hours. And I don't remember having a full weekend off when I worked at Netscape. And back then, that was kind of the startup entrepreneurial culture. All startups worked all the time. And that's how you thought you can be more competitive. I think it's become a lot better in terms of much better balanced companies starting up. But back then it was like that. People slept on the floor. When I was at Napster, I did not go home till 2 in the morning often. When we would push our new client. Napster was the company that disrupted how music was distributed. You guys are all too young. You take for granted you could just download the music you want. Back when I was listening to music in college, if you like one song out of CD, you have to You have to buy the whole damn CD to listen to that one song. So it was not a great music distribution model. Napster came in and really kind of disrupted that whole music industry to say, wake up, otherwise people are just going to trade the music under you.
Did you, Napster ran into some legal
Oh
difficulties?
yeah, totally. Napster was called the Thieves, Renegades, and all kinds of names. And poor Sean Fanning, who was, okay, let me just clarify. Sean Parker was not the founder of Napster. Sean Fanning was. He was 19 years old when he was going to Northeastern University when he developed this whole program, which was at the time, it was what's called peer-to-peer music sharing. So whatever you had ripped in from the CD at the time and in MP3 files on your computer, through the networking, you could kind of see like all the people who are on that server's music content on the desktop, and you could actually copy music from one desktop computer to another over the network. So just imagine, like people are just sharing music without paying for it. The music industry just went berserk. So they got a lot of lawyers, they sued us up to wazoo. And because Sean was just an innovator and he didn't know about all this music and digital rights and all that, he was not advised well. And he kind of put this out there as an innovative product without a lot of legal advice. So Napster was in a hell of a lot, still music industry blames Napster for them not being a very successful industry. I think over time they caught up. But they were like, we don't want to really change. We want our CD model. And they were totally mad at us, and they would not let us really survive.
How does that work when you're in engineering and in charge of engineering and you've got these other factors, political factors going on?
When you're an engineer in a startup, you're not just an engineer. You have to understand the whole business. You have to understand the customers. You have to understand all the issues that come with a startup. So the reason I love startup is because you are integrated part of that company, not just an engineer. You have to think about all those aspects. And the reason I keep doing startups and not go to a bigger company, number one, I hate politics. Number two, I hate bureaucracy. And number three, I love being in that innovative, nimble stage, and whatever you do can get out there and have people use it and give you feedback. So there's no satisfaction in getting something out there and solving problems and feeling like you're making an impact.
What was the funnest product that you've worked on or business?
Yeah, well, I would say Napster was a lot of fun. I mean, it was that fun that sort of kept me going. I mean, that had me going there. They brought me in to legitimize the business, build in all that audio fingerprinting, like recognition of what music it is, and being able to charge for that music and give the loyalty to kind of like today's Spotify was what Napster could have been.
Yeah.
And that was the first version of music distribution. So like, I came into Napster to build that digital rights management, audio fingerprinting, and all that technology, but we never got to launch it because music industry just wanted us to go away. They were so mad at us. This was even before iTunes.
So at one point you did launch your own business with Citrus Lane.
Yeah, I did. Citrus Lane was a company that was doing subscription commerce. So every month, I don't know whether anybody subscribed to Birchbox or Ipsy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of the same model.
Stitch Fix,
all those like monthly boxes you get, Shade for Men. Citrus Lane's box was for new parents who don't really know what products to try because there's so many products out there for your new baby. So the Citrus Lane sort of helped you get introduced to new products, whether it's an organic cereal or suntan lotion or some sort of organic baby food or whatnot. So, yeah.
So you all had to have relationships or partnerships with all these companies that had those products.
It's actually essentially a marketing company, right? So
Yeah.
you're helping people market their product to the right audience. So you have to build that business relationship, and then you have to also build the whole like distribution channel in terms of logistics and getting the boxes delivered on time.
So I think some of the funders in Citrus Lane were Greylock, VC.
Yeah, they were the first investor.
So how does that work? I mean, how do you recall? I mean, that's a big deal to get
Yeah.
Greylock as your first investor.
So, so those of you who are thinking about starting company, probably Citrus Lane was a unique case where it was kind of done through like relationships. So it is like networking really helps you, but number one, you have to have a great business idea and the business model and have the right team in place and all that. I would say Citrus Lane's idea was like, it's a sort of replica of ideas with different audience. And the seed round funding was $1 million. And I don't know if you guys understand the VC model, right? They're looking for home runs. So they might invest in 200 companies, but they only expect maybe 5% of those companies to be like Airbnbs and Stripes and Lyfts of the world. So that's what they're looking for, big home runs. So they do make lots of little investments. Yeah.
So it was actually, you all had a strike against you when you started. I think often you hear about it now that women, companies founded by women do not get invested in as much. And you had 2 women starting that company. Do you remember that as being an issue at all?
Yes.
Or a challenge?
When you go into VC meetings, when everybody's a man, it's kind of intimidating, right? And also, these were products that were targeted at parents, but mostly really at moms, right? Because even, some dads may take interest, but it was still majority of the audience would be women. So male VCs had a kind of hard time understanding, like, why is this important, or unless they had young children at the time. So there's a lot of biases in the industry, and I think you have to just work through that, but you do have to recognize where you stand with different kind of people. And VCs become your partners, right? Because they gave you money and they're also going to help you with your business and advise you and all that. So you have to approach like getting funding from a point of view of good partnership. Who are the people who would help me? Who would be a good partner? Who wouldn't constantly dismiss you or minimize you and minimize your ideas? Which is like all my career, I've left a lot of CEOs who were a little old school, right? I mean, who wants to work with somebody who's old school?
What can you talk about what that means? What
Okay.
old school means?
I think for me, old school means people who are. So I hope that you guys, and I know you are, but I do hear that it's a journey of understanding that diversity is important. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but from a point of view of business, diversity is important. Because the products that you build are not going to be, you're not building it for just specific audience. Maybe you are, but that's not a good business strategy. You're building in good business, you're building for people across different genders, different religious backgrounds, or people with diversity. So then, you need to be aware that you are respecting everybody and respecting everybody's backgrounds and identities, and that those diversity brings people with different backgrounds and experience and actually make a better product. This is statistically proven. So when I say old school, people have not really moved on from the journey of like compartmentalizing and being biased about people's skills, like girls are not good at math will be like the most egregious statement that anyone could make, right? But those things happened in old days. That's why I call it old school.
How do you find out when, as everybody is going out and looking for jobs, how do you flesh out kind of if this is the type of company you want to work on based on values that you hold dear to you?
I would ask that question directly. Or I would also look at the mix of the people that they have. And you might want to ask, like, why don't you have any women in the interview panel?
Yeah.
Whether you're men or women, you know, you don't want to work with all men. Is that fun?
Is there a way to do that so you don't sound like you're pushing it a little bit? Do you know what I
It's
mean?
okay to push. And I admire all young people who push. And, you know, if you don't push, we're not going to change. So, you know, if you ask that question and they think somehow you're a glass breaker, don't work for that company. That's your way of screening out the companies that you want to work for. If they're recruiting you, they should welcome that comment. They should address it. They should include you in their evolution of becoming a more diverse and inclusive company. So you could screen the company just as well as them screening you. There are plenty of jobs out there.
What did you feel like has been one of the most effective teams you've worked on?
I would say when I left Netscape, because I had built that team from scratch to about 165 people, I thought, oh my God, would I be able to work with as good of a team that I loved working with? So that was kind of, as I made a decision to leave and move on, that was kind of the question in my mind. But there are always really great people out there to work with. And as I have worked for many, many years, I feel like every new team I work with, I learn from. And they're better than the last team because technology is evolving, people are evolving, and ability to have that open communication and have tough conversations also gets really easier. So I would say, you know, I've been at Apollo for 5 months now, so it's still early, but I'm having a lot of fun. But Udemy, I joined the company when we had 13 engineers, 35 total people, and when we were just hitting 1 million students. Actually, Udemy had moved on. They have over 20 million students now. And so, like, you know, as I got there, we had just crossed 1 million students. And Udemy, because it was a company that was focused on learning, and our belief was that anybody can learn anything. And the flip side of that, because we were a marketplace where we're recruiting teachers from anywhere, that anyone with the passion to teach can teach on our platform. Those were our two beliefs. So we try to bring that out. Getting people who have a passion to teach to be able to teach on our platform and market their courses. And for students who want to learn anything to find their courses on Udemy. So I think because we held that value dear about our mission and where we wanted to go, I think we were very selective about the kind of culture we wanted to build in the company. So I think that was also a very special experience of building that company over 5 years, where we started as a 35-person company. Well, when I joined, it was 35. By the time I left, we were 475. And engineering grew from 13 to 150 by the time I left.
So there are not a lot of people that we have who can talk to hiring engineers. What is it that you look for when you're hiring an engineer? Or not hiring an engineer? What do you look for in hiring somebody?
So my first criteria for hiring an engineer is people who are not afraid of learning new things. Because whatever you learn today, 10 years from now, it may not, you know, that exact whatever technology that you learn may not exist. It might have evolved to something else. But the fact that you learned it, you mastered it, that skill of learning and learning yet another thing doesn't go away. And that'll be the case throughout your career. You may be constantly challenged to learn new things. And it's that fearlessness of, I could learn anything new. I think it's what I look for in people first. And you know, they need to also not be afraid of solving problems. Sometimes it's intimidating to go into an interview when they say, go to the whiteboard and solve this problem. But you know, ask lots of questions, people who are not afraid to tackle those problems. And you know, I also do something called deep dive, meaning we look at people, what their life's experience have been, what kind of hardships that you've had. I consider myself very privileged. Although I spoke no English at age 14, you know, those are things that I was able to tackle, but I also grew up with the privilege of importance of education, right? My parents were college grads. In those days, it wasn't all that common, and they emphasized education quite a bit, and that's a privilege, right? It isn't something, and there are a lot of people, maybe even in this room, whose parents did not go to college, and maybe they dearly wanted you to go and be successful. But these are all the privileges that we have, right? So I look at people's experiences of what hardships have you overcome, right? Because startup life is not always smooth. You are going to run into, there will be times like, oh, can we get our next round of funding? Can I still continue to work here? Kind of questions come up in a startup. Or like if you're an entrepreneur, like, can I make the payroll next month, right? Those are going to be things that that you're going to carry as an entrepreneur, because it's that responsibility, and and having to make the right decisions and all that, right?
Claire, that kind of leads me, you've mentioned some things, but as the students here, regardless of what they're majoring or background, or whether they're first year or PhD students, do you have any thoughts for them that you kind of wish someone had told you when you started out?
Let's see. The number one advice that I give to people is actually self-confidence is half the game. So, whatever you are striving to do, first have that conviction and confidence that you could do it. And that, like 10 people might reject your idea, but there will be somebody who will fund you. So the founder of Udemy, he actually probably did about 200 presentations before he got a seed round funding, right? That's what it takes, tenacity and belief that what you want to create is the right thing to create. Story of Aaron Bali, he grew up in Malatya, Turkey. Remote part of Turkey where like there was a one schoolroom where they taught like K through 12 children. He was privileged because his parents spent half of their life saving to buy him a computer and internet connection when he was 14. And on internet, he learned math, and he competed in Math Olympiad, Europe, and that earned him a scholarship to go to prep school, to go to college. Turkey's education system is like, if you don't go to prep school, you can't get into good college. And if you don't get into good college, you cannot get the top tier jobs, right? So that's very much more restrictive. And upon graduating from Middle East Technical University, he had this idea, I want that education, that ability to learn to be accessible to everybody. And he started this company in Turkey, but Turkey wasn't exactly an entrepreneurial friendly place. So he said, I gotta go to America and restart this company. So he came here and worked for SpeedDate, a startup at the time. He pounded the pavements, giving 200 plus presentations before he got a seed round funding.
Did you start, you started after he got a seed round?
Yeah.
Other thoughts before we go into our Q&A?
I just want to say that like the reason I like to also work at startup is because I learn so much from people, young people. I think you guys are so further ahead than my peers when I was in college in terms of how you really think about serious issues. And I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but I am just so proud and almost like a parent, but like also respectful of the just people who are coming out of school these days. So just have that confidence that what you learn here may not be like A to A applicable in whatever you do in life, but these are all valuable learnings. That there's probably a ton more that you can learn because a lot of hard work got you here.
Claire, thank you for your time so far, and I know we'll have questions, and if not, I have some more questions. We'll open it up, and just like always, can you all announce or just say your name and maybe what you're studying would be nice. Did you all really? It just kind of left you that way. Well, I am actually curious. I do still have more questions. You said that solving problems, being a problem solver, is really important. And so I was curious, in all these different positions and in all these startups, what do you feel like was the stickiest problem, and how did you solve it? Sorry,
think
this was
part of, sure. I mean, there are, I hate to say it this way, but all technical problems are solvable. If you can't solve it, redefine the problem. So those are not usually the problems that I think are sticky. I think I would say Napster was the biggest challenge, because we had already illegally allowed all this music to be downloaded, so that building that credibility back up wasn't going to be possible, almost, right? As we're building out this totally legal music distribution system, I did so many presentations to CTOs of Sony Music, Universal Music, BMG. They were like, yeah, okay. But they had no intention of allowing us to continue.
Do you think that now, if you had to do it again, how would you do it differently?
I'm not sure I would have done anything differently at the time. I went into a situation I knew was going to be difficult to recover from, but I still wanted the challenge. Because I thought Napster was really cool at the time, because if you were exposed to Spotify for the first time, before now, you had to go out and buy CDs for music.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a cool platform, and the application was amazing. And just rebuilding that and totally make it legal so we could relaunch the service for 98 million people who downloaded Napster was going to be even if we had a 1% chance of succeeding, is something I wanted to do.
Yeah?
Hi, I'm Jonathan. I'm also studying industrial engineering operations research. So I just wanted to know, what was some of the most valuable things that the industrial engineering major has taught you for industry, and yeah.
I'm sorry, can I repeat
the most valuable things that industrial engineering has taught you?
Yeah, the major
Yeah.
here.
Well, if you look at industrial engineering, it's all about solving problems and optimization problems, right? So I think, I wouldn't say I enjoyed all the industrial engineering classes, but that problem-solving component is everywhere. Applying the right logic, building the right model, and just getting to a solution that works, and then you could continue to solve that same problem to optimize it even more. So for example, I think industrial engineering taught me to keep at the problem that could give you better results. So for example, on a website, a lot of what we do is optimization of the website performance. So in an e-commerce site, what you change on a page where you click out or add a product to your shopping cart, all those things are measured all the way. Data science people would identify with this. So imagine if you could increase that performance of click out, people actually checking out on Amazon by even 0.1 or 0.01%. It's a huge amount of dollars if you translate it into dollars, right? So sometimes even changing the fonts or colors to make the checkout button even brighter could give you that 1% increase in conversion rate. So constantly thinking about how do you improve it continuously was what I learned in IEOR, that you could think about approaching it in different ways, and there are also, you could break down problems in different ways where you could improve pieces where you could have a big impact.
Great, thank you.
We have a question over here.
Hey Claire, my name is Devesh. I'm a sophomore studying data science and business. I saw that you had gone through a lot of different companies in your career, and wanted to know what motivated you to switch companies at any given point. Was it,
Yeah.
were you more interested in the work that the other company was doing? Was it ambition?
Sure.
Or what was it?
I think in old days, like staying with one company, and I don't know if you guys even know the concept of gold watch at the end of your retirement, might have been the way that people like stayed at a big companies like IBM or other companies. That's just like after being at early stage startups in my career, it's just no longer my aspiration to go to a bigger company and be part of that big machine. And reasons why I switched jobs are multiple, but some, like as an engineering VP, for me to do the same thing more than 5 years, I don't get a credit. I'm looked upon as somebody who should be doing new things every 4 to 5 years. So I could talk about Udemy. Like I built that team from 13 to 150. Company grew quite a bit, even in terms of revenue and all that. But I felt like after 5 years of leading engineering, there was just too much of a Claire in the whole engineering culture. And everybody said it was an amazing culture. It was great. It was the best place they worked at. But I also kind of felt my own team to be challenged with something different, right? And for me to just stay and kind of run the engineering the way I was running it wasn't gonna, I don't know, I wasn't satisfied, and I didn't think that it'll be serving my own engineering team well. I wanted them to be challenged with different ideas, different management style, and think things differently. So when like sometimes the engineer goes like, well, no, Claire doesn't like that. She said this and that. And I said it like 3 years ago. We have a different problem now. So we shouldn't be thinking it that way. And you should remember what I said 3 years ago. So that's when I thought, okay, it's time for me to go and do something new. I kind of felt like I understand marketplace. And we did the whole code migration from PHP to Python, and we introduced the whole data pipeline and data science. I kind of felt like I did a lot, and that was good enough. And it was somebody else's turn to take it to the next level. And also one other reason to leave for me is, and this may not be like great advice, but I want to be valued as who I am, what value I bring to the table. Sometimes VCs get greedy. They are all greedy, actually. But, like Udemy's doing really well. I'm airing a little bit of dirty laundry. But VCs decided they want to do even better, right? So the team was doing really well, management team was doing really well, and yet they decided to bring in a new CEO because they thought this is a company that we could hit it out of the home run, out of the park, because they're doing really well. So let's bring in even like bigger person who's been there, done that to take the company to the next level. And that doesn't always work. They recently let go of the new CEO who they brought in. And again, that new CEO was a bit of an old school. So he didn't know how to really get the best out of people. To me, the management's job is to get the best work out of your people and let them go as far as they want to go. And when I'm not in that environment, I don't do well. And I don't, I could do other things.
We have a question up front.
Hi, Claire. Thank you for being here. My name is Jean-Claude. I'm interested, you have a lot of startup experience, but there was that one moment where you decided to start your own venture. What were some of the thoughts that went into deciding to go off on your own and start something that's yours? And what were some of the fears and processes that you took to make that first leap?
Yeah. I'm not that methodical or thoughtful. It's more like, oh, it'll be kind of cool thing for me to do. So at the time, I left Nextag, and I was thinking about doing something new. And then Mariah, who worked at Netscape in the past, she and I got introduced, and she wanted to start this company, and she wanted to have me partner with her. So, it was a new idea, a new kind of technology, new thing for me to do at the time. But, had I been well, I also don't want to be ageist because you could do anything at any point in your life. Being a founder and the head of the company and CEO is a lot of responsibility, right? You have to shoulder the payroll of people because there may be people who live in, who are breadwinners for their family. I have family myself, And I've seen, I partner with the CEOs throughout all these companies, and I've seen CEOs who kind of give up their whole life to be the CEO, put all their whole energy into creating that company. I have family. I don't actually want that. I don't feel like that I could put in enough to make sure that I am taking care of everybody in the company as well as the investors. So I think that being a founder takes another level of commitment. And I think if you could do it before you have family, that's probably ideal. And just hire people without family who could kind of live on nothing. Just kidding.
Hi, my name is Nafe. I'm doing the startup semester at Berkeley this semester.
Yeah.
And I had a question regarding like the culture and like the work that is done at a startup. Like how, like I've heard in the Valley that there's a culture of having like a democracy of like a meritocracy of ideas where no matter like who like says an idea or like has a good point, like it's considered. How much of that is important and how should it be balanced with like also having like seniority and like experienced people making the decisions and like you know what I mean? So
Yeah, sure. I think everybody has a different preference of what kind of company you work at. Some people like very stable, structured environment where it's very predictable. You don't have to worry about where your paycheck is coming from. You don't have to worry about the next customer who has to be successful for the company to survive, right? And then you need to choose those companies where there's a good structure. You can be still productive and contribute, but maybe like the impact that you have when you have 1,000 engineers or like a 10,000 person company, the impact you can have, you can still have an impact, but may not be as great as if you're at a 30-person company where everybody does count, right? And then in terms of how you want to work and how much you can contribute, those are things, it's based on company culture as well. So you have to assess, but when you're one of 30, you also are part of the culture, right? And you're part of that, the early stage team who define how we should work as a company. So just being very open and contributing your ideas and being able to provide that input to the founders or the management team or leadership team is super important in terms of what you want to learn. To me, what you want to learn is your career. And then with that learning, what you do is also your career. But that's the consequences, those are results of learning. So what opportunities there are those things that you should really assess, right? And a lot of companies pitch their culture as a selling point, right? So kind of digging in and asking these questions, how do you onboard your new people? How do you help people continue to learn? All those things are going to be good questions where you can assess what the culture is. I wrote a blog post about what kind of engineering culture I value. So it's on our website, it's on LinkedIn as well. What I value is creating that space where people feel safe, where they can do their best work. I was at CalHex last year, and I met with some women engineers who felt like they didn't feel safe in their own classroom because there was so much bullying going on, right? And that's not okay. We need a safe place where people can learn. We need a safe place where people can work. And because that's kind of the fundamental to how you can learn and contribute, and yeah.
I had a follow-up really quickly, if that's okay. So how, as a leader of an engineering team, how should you balance having everyone have their say, but also have a little bit of hierarchy so things don't go nuts really quickly?
Yeah. So this is sort of part of leadership is making the tough decision, right? So if consensus-driven engineering works sometimes when people recognize good ideas and they execute well. But sometimes it's not always, you cannot always rely on consensus-driven decision making. So part of engineering, being a leader means, listening to the right ideas and also pointing at the right decision makers. Everybody can contribute their ideas. Ultimately, somebody has to make the call. So recognizing, depending on the problem, who the person who should make the call is also part of my job. And sometimes when that doesn't happen well, then I have to make the call.
Hey, Claire. Hey, thank you so much for coming here tonight. You mentioned, and I'll mention, my name is Yotam. I'm studying environmental economics here. You've mentioned that you worked with, companies that are working on cutting edge technology, really revolutionary products. And you also said that you mentioned that you were pulled towards, cool ideas with companies. And so I was wondering if you could give us some insight on some companies that you consider today that are cool or are working on revolutionary, cutting-edge technologies.
Well, there are lots out there, right? Application of blockchain into like healthcare, I think are really cool. There are just so many that I cannot even keep up. But cool is from my point of view, right? Everybody has a different ideas of cool. So you have to kind of look at what speaks to you in terms of that coolness. Like socially innovative companies are cool, I think, right? When I joined Udemy, I also had an opportunity to go to Twitch TV. Do I want to enable gamers versus enable anyone who want to learn? Was a choice that I had to make, right? And it wasn't that hard of a decision for me. I thought helping people learn was so much cooler to me than, and most people might think Twitch is cool, but no, I thought Udemy was cool. So it's your values and your standards you have to apply, and what do I want to work on? You all have a choice on where you work and what you work on, right? So that what you work on, if you are passionate about that, you will get better performance from you, right? Because you're passionate about solving that problem. So you got to choose what you do every day based on, what makes me happy. One of my engineers, we just hired out of Amazon. We're a small company. We can't really compete with money, against Amazon, right? Amazon stock price keep going up. But, when he accepted a job from us, he said, well, you cannot really buy happiness. But it's actually a luxury, right? Because he made some money at a couple other startups that he did before. Now that he has that privilege and to be able to make that call. Right now, my satisfaction with my job, my happiness is more important than money.
Seems a perfect circle for the conversation. So thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
That was awesome.